reaction coming in from Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge. He has posted, and I quote him, "Instead of the simple and efficient GST of Congress, your government imposed Gabbar Singh Tax by collecting from 9 different slabs and collected more than 55 lakh crore rupees in 8 years. Now you're talking about putting a simple band-aid after inflicting deep wounds on the public by talking about a savings festival of 2.5 lakh crore rupees. The public will never forget that you collected GST on their pulses, rice, grains, pencils, books, treatment, farmers, tractors, etc. Your government should apologize to the public." That is the reaction that's coming in from the Congress Chief Mallikarjun Kharge. Remember, several political reactions have been coming in, particularly from the opposition, and we will keep getting you more and more of these reactions coming in. Let me quickly go across to my guest this evening and welcome Professor Gaurav Vallabh. He's a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Professor Vallabh, good evening. Namaskar. Thank you very much for sparing the time to speak with us. The Prime Minister, Mr. Vallabh, spoke about, the MSMEs, the Bajat Utsav, Nagarik Devo Bhava. He also spoke about the neo-middle class. But as far as the implementation of GST 2.0 is concerned, how far do you think it will be able to achieve the aim that it set out with?
See, Shreya, earlier we used to have 4 GST rates, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%. Now effectively we are having only 2 rates, that is 5% and 18%. And 91% of goods which were there in 28% and 12% came down to the lower GST rates. And I can tell you, except few sin goods, whatever we consume, from toothpaste to soap, from vehicle to clothes, from hotels to any other services, whatever we consume in our daily life, there is a GST rate reduction. And today, Prime Minister himself had given a data that after 12 lakh rupees of income tax exemption, up to 12 lakh rupees of income, there is no income tax, and supplemented with the GST rate reduction, there will be 2.5 lakh crore rupee were added in the pockets of the country. And as per SBI's research, with both these reforms, there will be an additional consumption in the economy to the extent of 5,31,000 crore. And before I joined, you were talking about Gabbar Singh Tax. I will tell you, Shreya, what is Gabbar Singh Tax? Gabbar Singh Tax was the chaotic pre-GST regime, a fragmented mesh of excise duty, VAT, service taxes, octroi. I can name many taxes, but the list goes on and on. Trucks used to stand idle at the state borders. Small firms used to juggle with the multiple filings, and consumer paid the prices. That was called as Gabbar Singh taxes. Okay. And he had mentioned the truck and all those things. You will be surprised to know, Shreya, in pre-GST rates, the tractors used to have 19% taxes in the form of excise duty, in the form of VAT. Now that got reduced to 5%. So that is the journey which we had traveled. Okay. And with the Bachat Utsav, which we are going to celebrate from tomorrow, I am very hopeful that consumers of our country are going to follow what Prime Minister had asked us to do, that we have to support our MSMEs, we have to support our large companies, we have to support the Make in India products. If 5.31 lakh crore rupees of additional demand is generated with Make in India products, I can say this is what truly Atmanirbharta is called.
Okay. Mr. Vallabh, one of the great things about GST is the fact that it has had record collections in the past years that we have seen, and the government has been informing citizens about it, how this has been the biggest indirect collection, and it has been helping the government. But at the same time, we've also had the concern of GST theft through billing and other such means. How does the government plan to deal with that front?
See, that says what you are asking me a question. That is primarily to take all state governments on board. And unfortunately, what is happening, what the so-called India Alliance parties are saying inside the GST Council and what their leaders say outside the GST Council, there is a drastic difference. So people used to ask that why 4 rates earlier? Earlier we used to have 200 types of rates that were zeroed down into 4 rates. Now 4 rates into 2 rates. This is called as constant and continuous improvement. And as far as cess is concerned, that is to compensate the state governments and to ensure them that there will be no revenue deficit to you. There will be a specific cess which we are collecting, which will be used for your compensation. So that will be a process to take them on board. And in fact, all state governments had agreed to that.
Since you mentioned state governments, Professor Vallabh, the state governments have been talking about their revenue loss, something that they had mentioned in the GST Council meeting as well. And now they're saying that, look, we just wanted an extension of the compensation we get for our revenue loss due to these reforms coming in. What would you say to them?
See, Shreya, as I quote Finance Minister, who is also the chairperson of the GST Council, she categorically mentioned that all the GST reform measures were unanimously accepted by all GST Council members, which includes some members of finance ministers from the Congress and other India Alliance ruled governments. Because why it is happening, Shreya? You please try to understand the reason. 5,31,000 crore rupees of additional consumption in our economy. 5,31,000 crore rupees. So that if you will measure that in the absolute terms, it will be something around 1.6% of GDP. If this 5,31,000 crore is added to our current GDP, the current GDP will shoot up by 1.6%. So if current GDP is going to shoot up, the benefit of the increased GST collection will be there with the state governments also, because ultimately whatever central government collects in the form of GST, that will be shared with the state governments as per the recommendations of Finance Commission. So there will be nothing, no fear. Everybody knows that ours is a consumption driven economy, and with 12 lakh rupees of no income tax up to the income of 12 lakh and GST rate reduction and GST reform measures, there will be a win-win situation for businesses, for consumers, for large corporates, for MSMEs and for government also. Because in long term and medium term, there will be no deficit as far as the GST is concerned, because the additional consumption which we are going to generate is going to take care of the revenue deficit because of the rate reduction which is given in almost everything. Shreya, if I can tell you in one line, except gutka, cigarette and carbonated drinks, everything, whatever a middle class consume, whatever a middle class consume, whatever people of our country consume, everything's prices are going to be slashed from tomorrow. That is the reason PM is telling that from tomorrow onwards it's a Bachat Utsav.
Yeah, and that is why the Prime Minister also mentioned in his address that 99% of products are coming under 5%, and that's why the cheaper rates. But Mr. Vallabh, as far as businesses, corporates, industry is concerned, there have been concerns when the government says that, they need to innovate more. There is that sentiment that prevails that our industry needs to do much more than just nuts and bolts. They need to manufacture and innovate more. But do you think the industry is willing to absorb the shock that comes in, if at all? Because, we've seen that various sectors are seeing cost cutting. There are already external headwinds that are impacting our industry, and therefore are they as willing to absorb the shock?
See, in the last 11 years, there is a constant effort to improve the indigenous technology. Because earlier what we used to have, that technology is with some foreign country and here in India we used to have something assembling, and the major portion of this particular product goes to the technology provider, and the people or the companies which are assembling are not getting the full benefit. So now in last 11 years we are trying that we should also have our indigenous technology. It should not that we are just becoming the assembly part of the manufacturing we are doing in India. So we are not getting a major contribution in the GDP. So from technology to the final product, the complete cycle we are making, and lot of Indian companies, not only large but MSMEs, had shown their footprints on the global map from the quality perspective, from the safety perspective, from the technology perspective, from the perspective of the price. So I hope that environment, with this GST rate reduction and income tax reduction, with these two reform measures, with the additional consumption in the economy, I hope lot of other MSMEs and lot of other large corporates which are little bit here and there as far as the indigenous technology is concerned, they will also develop their own technology, because ultimately the technology will have a major contribution in the GDP. So we are developing from AI to semiconductors, from solar to the hardwares. We are developing our own technology, from defense equipments to aircrafts, from apparels to the papers, from pencil to pen. We are developing indigenous technology, and that technology if we are developing, and we are in the process, and if this cycle is going to be completed, the major share of the GDP will be there in India, and that is what I understand as Atmanirbharta.
Can I also then understand from you, Professor Vallabh, what about the sectoral impact? You know, with the kind of tariff challenge that India is grappling with, yes, we are focusing on strengthening domestically, but we have to deal with that as well. And you mentioned apparel, that's just one of the sectors that is being impacted by it. As far as that is concerned, how do you plan to deal with this? Is this the first step in it?
Shreya, next week our Commerce Minister will be in US.
Yes.
And I don't know what will be the talks, what will be the discussion, but I am very hopeful as a citizen of this proud nation that we are going to arrive at a win-win situation for India, for America, by keeping the interest of the citizens, number one, by keeping the interest of the businesses of both the nations, and by keeping the long-term relationship what we had with the America. So the question which you are asking about the geopolitical scenario, please wait for some more time, and I am very optimistic that something we are going to arrive regarding the apparel and the sectors. Please wait for some time. Indian MSME sector, government is always there for that sector. No need of any panic. The government is there to hold the hand of the MSME entrepreneurs.
Okay. My one last question.
We had faced, Shreya, for coronavirus also, COVID virus also. Don't worry, we will come out with shining colors out of all these geopolitical pressures.
Okay. Well, let's hope so. My one last question to you, Professor Vallabh. The Prime Minister talked about the neo-middle class, and that is something that is very crucially being seen. There are 25 crore people who have been uplifted from poverty. They're not exactly in the middle class, they're in the neo-middle class, and therefore their aspirations are much more, they are higher, they are many. And that's why the Prime Minister spoke about how the government wants to fulfill their aspirations by aiding with such reforms. What is the government envisioning for the neo-middle class, and how do you plan to aid it further?
See, in one line, your answer to your question, Prime Minister Modi ji wants to increase the disposable income in the pocket of neo-middle class. He wants that the disposable income in the pocket should go up. How it is going to go up? When you are going to give these kind of reliefs, everybody consumes toothpaste, everybody consumes hair oil, Everybody consumes bathing soap, everybody consumes basic apparels, everybody consumes basic footwear, everybody consumes the basic automobile. In all these products, GST rate is either 0% or 5%.
Yeah.
So this is the answer to your question. We want, and especially the Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji wants to increase disposable income in the pockets of new middle class.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much to you, Professor Gaurav Valla, for joining us on Times Now and explaining to us the government's vision with the GST 2.0 kicking in tomorrow. With that, viewers, it's time for a short break. Of course, our updates, analysis of the Prime Minister's address and other news from across the world continue post the break.